I'm about to show you how to mix any vocal recorded through a Rode NT1 microphone using only stock plugins. For today's tutorial, I'll be using Logic Pro, but don't worry because every recording software out there has their own versions of the plugins I'm about to show you today, so as long as you learn the concept, you can apply it to any of them. In this session, we have two vocal tracks, one for singing and one for spoken word because the process is pretty much the same. The first plugin we're going to use is known as a DE-ESSER. This is a tool used to minimize sibilance whenever you say words with the letter S. And here's a couple of settings that you need to be aware of. Threshold means at which point the de-esser is going to turn on, and you want to set it in a way that the reduction only happens during the S sounds. If you bring it down too much, it's going to start cutting all of the frequencies of your recording, which is not ideal. Reduction means how much of the frequencies we're going to cut, and of course, you get to choose which frequencies to attenuate. At the bottom, you can choose between a bell curve or a shelf, but since we're targeting specific frequencies, I'm going to choose the bell curve and then keep the settings on wide. Typically, sibilance is going to be found anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 Hertz, and this will change from person to person based on their own voice, but the best way I found to locate those frequencies is to pull up an EQ, and as your track is playing in the background, watch out for some spikes in that frequency range. So let's have a listen. You're listening to the Rode NT1 Signature Series condenser microphone, and this is what this microphone sounds like. To me, that was around 6,000 Hertz. And as a rule of thumb, I like to keep the reduction around 10 decibels, but of course, your settings may change depending on how harsh your own recording is. So now let's listen to the track before and then after applying the de-esser. You're listening to the Rode NT1 Signature Series condenser microphone without any post-processing, and this is what this microphone sounds like. You're listening to the Rode NT1 Signature Series condenser microphone without any post-processing, and this is what this microphone sounds like. The next plugin in this vocal chain is Subtractive EQ. EQ is just short for equalizer, and it's a tool that we use to shape the sound of our recordings by either boosting or cutting certain frequencies. On a typical EQ, the frequencies range from 20 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz, and the whole concept is if you grab any of the EQ bands and you bring them up, that would be a boost. If you bring them down, that would be a cut. Now that you know the basics, the first trick I want to show you is to use a high-pass filter, which you can find on the left side. And when it comes to vocals, I like to keep the high-pass filter around 80 to 100 Hertz. This is going to help remove some of that really low rumble that we typically don't need on a vocal. It's also going to help minimize background noise in your room, such as a laptop fan or air conditioning system. And it can be a great tool for music production because it helps to free up space for low-end instruments to shine, like the kick drum and the bass guitar. Next, grab any of the EQ points, boost them up really high, make the Q narrow, and then sweep around as your track is playing in the background. Keep in mind, nothing is going to sound great boosted this much, but certain frequencies are definitely going to stand out in a negative way, and those we're going to cut by about 3 dB or so. So let's have a listen. I like the way that you move around between the sheets, calling me out. And by the time the sun goes down, I've given you all my love, yeah. I like the way that you move around between the sheets, calling me out. And by the time the sun goes down, I've given you all my love, yeah. And just by using Subtractive EQ, you're really going to help to smooth out your vocal and make it much easier to listen to. Next, we're going to use a compressor. And if you're unfamiliar with compression, all it is a tool that we use to minimize the dynamics in audio. Naturally, when we talk, and especially when we sing, you're going to notice that certain parts of a recording may be much louder than others. And what a compressor does is grab the loudest and quietest parts, bring them closer together to give you a more even and balanced performance. And here's a couple of settings that you need to know about. Threshold means at which point the compressor is going to turn on, and you want to set it in a way that the meter is hitting 3 to 5 decibels of reduction on average. Ratio means how much compression will be applied. The higher the ratio, the more aggressive the compression. But when it comes to vocals, 3 to 1 or even 4 to 1 is a great starting point. Attack means how fast the compressor is going to turn on, and I like to keep it at a fast setting. And release means how fast it's going to turn off, so I'll keep it at a medium setting. So let's have a listen. You're listening to the Rode NT1 Signature Series condenser microphone being plugged straight into my audio interface without any post-processing, and this is what this microphone sounds like. This time, you're listening to the Signature Series NT1 with a bit of EQ and compression, and this is what the mic sounds like fully mixed. And by the time the sun goes down, I've given you all my love. And by the time the sun goes down, I've given you all my love. Yeah. As you just heard, this made the vocals sound much more fuller and way more consistent. And by the way, if you're getting value out of this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The next plugin we're going to use is Additive EQ. This time, we're actually going to boost certain frequencies to enhance our recording. However, this is the part of the tutorial that will change depending on the mic model that you currently own. If you have the Rode NT1A, the 5th generation, or the Signature series, all of those mics have a pretty high treble boost on their own, so I wouldn't advise boosting more of the top end, otherwise you can make your recording sound a bit harsh. However, if you're using the 4th generation NT1, which is the all-black one, that microphone has a very flat frequency response, and so I do use a bit of a high shelf around 10,000 Hertz just to add a bit of that top-end sparkle to my recordings. And then for all NT1 models, if your vocals sound thin and you want to add a bit of that chest sound to your voice, then try boosting around 100 Hertz, which is going to help introduce some low end to your recording. Just try not to overdo it, otherwise you're going to reintroduce some of that low rumble and background noise that was previously removed with the high pass filter. So now let's listen to the vocal tracks completely raw and then with all of the plugins. You're listening to the Rode NT1 Signature Series condenser microphone being plugged straight into my audio interface without any post-processing, and this is what this microphone sounds like. This time, you're listening to the Signature Series NT1 with a bit of EQ and compression, and this is what the mic sounds like fully mixed. I like the way that you move around between the sheets, calling me out. And by the time the sun goes down, I've given you all my love. Yeah. And here's a pro tip that's going to help you save a ton of time. If you're planning to record your microphone in the same recording space every single time, there's absolutely no need to do all of this processing over and over again. Instead, go to your recording software and save your project as a template. The next time, create a new session from the template and you're going to have all of the plugins ready to go. And even though mixing is a crucial part of the production process, it really is useless unless you know how to record yourself properly. So if you want to learn how to do that, make sure to click on this video and I'll share with you some of my favorite tips for recording vocals.